So Apple's spring event has just finished, and it was a good one. Some surprises in there and some things that we were expecting as well. Let's do a quick review. As some people had noted before the event, the spring Apple logo was reminiscent of the L and the O from the iconic Mac Hello logo. You guys were absolutely spot on, as we'll find out in a bit. First of all, of course, Apple likes to start off by talking about its environmental credentials. They're saying their corporate offices, retail stores and data centers are all carbon neutral and powered by renewables now. Apple next spoke about their Apple credit card. This isn't available to us in the UK, it's United States only at the moment. There are some changes to it. In particular, there's a family plan now so that you can issue cards to children aged 13 and over on the family account. I'll leave it up to you to decide if you think that's a good idea or not. They spoke about podcasts and a new redesigned podcast app. This actually looks really good. It looks like it's going to be able to surface new content and help you to find content. One key introduction is subscriptions to your favorite podcasts. So this is great news for creators because they'll be able to monetize their podcast directly from their listener base rather than selling advertising. So we'll be interested to see how that pans out. For those iPhone 12 fans and fans of the color purple, you'll be pleased to know that you can pre-order from Friday an iPhone 12 in the new color of purple, and it's available on April the 30th. I quite like purple, but I'm not sure I'm going to buy a purple iPhone. They then started talking about the Find My app. They were waxing lyrical about how great Find My is for finding lost Macs and iPhones. I've got to say, a few years back now, so perhaps when Find My wasn't quite so powerful, but we got robbed twice and several of our computers got stolen. In fact, quite a few of our computers got stolen. And I went on to Find My to remotely brick all of those devices, and not one of them surfaced again at any point. So it didn't work for me. Hopefully Apple's improved it since then. That's not really what they were aiming to speak about. Of course, we've finally got AirTags, and they look much as we expected them to look. There's options for personalization, and any iPhone with a U1 chip can precisely locate these AirTags. I assume they will still work with prior iPhones, but the location may not be quite as accurate. So iPhones with the U1 chips, that's iPhone 11 and later. The pricing is $29 for one, or there's a 4-pack for $99. And these are apparently available on Friday. However, I would suspect that the AirTag isn't much use without a holder for it. You know, a keyring holder they showed and a couple of other things. There's also an Hermes tie-in, so if you want a particularly expensive leather case for your AirTags, then that's also going to be available. Next, we moved into Apple TV. This is no surprise here. I was absolutely expecting them to update Apple TV. It makes perfect sense to have something with a bit more power, particularly with the fact that Apple's pushing Apple Arcade, and they did talk about gaming quite a lot today, in fact, with Apple TV and some other things. And they have, of course, released a new Apple TV 4K, which has the A12 Bionic in it. But some of the main features that they've now added are HDR high frame rate support. So this is also extended to AirPlay, so it means if you've got the latest iPhone 12 Pro, you can actually stream the Dolby Vision high frame rate content from your iPhone over to your TV via AirPlay. I think that's quite interesting. Streaming providers, I think, are still working on HDR high frame rate, but it's nice to have a device that's going to be future-proofed and is going to support that kind of stuff. One of the really cool features that I like is that the new Apple TV is going to be able to use your iPhone to calibrate your television. I say calibrate your television. What I mean is calibrate the Apple TV to adjust its output for your television. So without adjusting the picture of your TV screen and going into any of those nonsensical Sony, Samsung or LG menus, the Apple TV will just adjust its output. So it uses your iPhone to test different brightnesses and colors of the screen, and it color balances it, adjusts the Apple TV output to ensure that you get a great picture. I think that's absolutely fantastic. There's a new Siri remote. It's larger than the existing one, and it's got a sort of aluminium finish reminiscent of the iPads and the new iPhones. It's also added a circular jog control, which is something that is sorely needed, I have to say, as an Apple TV user. I find it very frustrating trying to navigate through content. So having a jog control that you can sort of skim through the timeline with, That seems really good. And it's also going to work as a TV remote. So they've got a 32 gig model at $179 and a 64 gig model at $199, which you can order on April the 30th, and they'll be shipping second half of May. So those are the kind of things that we expected. I was pretty sure we'd get an Apple TV, pretty sure that AirTags might surface finally. The purple iPhone, that's a nice surprise. And the podcast thing, that's good. Now we get to the thing that I wasn't expecting. I didn't think that we would see any Macs at this event. And we have seen a Mac at this event. We've got a new iMac powered by the M1 chip. So this is just the smaller iMac. It's got an interesting new design, very much as we expected, an iPad on a stand. That's what it looks like. And it's available in 7 colors with a brighter color on the back and a kind of muted color on the front. In fact, the whole front of the iMac is a sheet of glass, which they say is low reflectivity glass. I'd be inclined to believe that. The current iMac is pretty good like that. There's no Apple logo on the front of the iMac, and I found that a little bit jarring, I have to say. I've got used to having the little Apple logo on the iMac, and that's going to take a little bit of getting used to. So maybe you love that. Or maybe you hate it. Inside, of course, it's completely redesigned, and they've been able to build this iMac so thin, and in this particular design, only because of the M1 chip. Inside, there are just 2 fans to handle the cooling, and in normal usage, they're apparently under 10 decibels, which is basically inaudible. It's 11.5 millimeters thick. That's quite something. It'll have a 24-inch display in it. So what we're talking about here is a replacement of the 21.5-inch iMac. There's no replacement for the 27-inch iMac before you get too excited about that. It will have a 4.5K Retina display with True Tone support. And quite excitingly, for everybody who's working from home, a 1080p FaceTime HD camera. Finally, thank you, Apple. This will make use of the M1's image signal processors and neural learning system to give us computational improvements of our images. So if you're an ugly mug like me, it's not going to make you beautiful, but what it will do is enhance lighting, get rid of noise, improve the dynamic range and the quality of your image. So that's great news in the world that we're currently living in, where we're all video conferencing regularly. Of course, that's only part of the picture. You need good quality audio as well. So they've got a 3-mic array, which they're saying is studio quality. It's a beamforming mic system, so it's going to ignore background noise and really focus in on your voice. So it'd be interesting to see how that works. And then that's backed up with this 6-speaker system. And I'm afraid I haven't got much information about that because my connection dropped out as they were talking about that. But I'm sure the audio will be brilliant. It already is brilliant on the current iMacs. I'm sure they've been able to put decent speakers even in that thin chassis. Of course, it's got the M1 chip, and Apple made lots of claims about how much faster it was than the previous 21.5-inch iMac. Well, yeah, that's pretty obvious, isn't it? Now, there are 2 versions of this. One of them has 2 Thunderbolt ports, just 2 Thunderbolt ports on the back. The other one has 2 Thunderbolt ports and 2 USB ports, which are USB Type-C. The power cable is a magnetic attachment, and I wonder why you need that so much on an iMac, but there we go, that's what it is. And of course, because that chassis is so thin, the power supply is not built into the computer, which means you've got a separate power supply. And I was about to start griping about it, but then Apple have done something quite clever. They've put the Ethernet port into the power supply brick, so you can plug in Ethernet and it will be delivered through that power cable into your Mac. So that's a really nice piece of design. I quite like that. I'm sure it means that the power supply, of course, if you need to replace it, will be horrendously expensive, but there we go. When it comes to interface devices, we've got 3 different Magic Keyboards. They're all color matched to your iMac and are included, as the keyboard always was with the iMac. There's a version that has the emoji button and shortcut keys, much like an iPad keyboard, like the Logitech one I use here. I suspect that's the default keyboard that gets supplied. Not particularly excited about that, but I am very excited that they've released a Magic Keyboard with Touch ID. Absolutely brilliant, and about time. One thing I really like as well is that you can change users by just one touch of the Touch ID button. So I'm assuming that will be a Mac OS feature, so that will also come to the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro with Touch ID. They've also done a Magic Keyboard with a numeric keypad, so if you like the bigger keyboard, and that also has Touch ID on it. I don't know what the pricing will be on those keyboards. I mean, the existing Magic Keyboards with the numeric keypads are not cheap as it is, so I suspect they'll be quite expensive. And they're available in all of the 7 colours. Also, the Magic Mouse and the trackpad is available in all of those 7 matching colours. I expect the mouse is what gets included as standard. That's what currently happens, and you can pay a bit extra to have a touchpad instead. That model with just the 2 Thunderbolt ports, that starts at $1,299, but it's got the entry-level M1 chip, the same as the base MacBook Air, where you lose 1 GPU core. So it's 8-core CPU, 7-core GPU, 8 gigs of RAM and a 256 gig SSD. Obviously, it's all soldered on, and you can moan about that in the comments section, as I'm sure plenty will. $1,499, so an extra $200 gets you the extra GPU core and gets you those 2 USB ports in addition. Obviously, you'll be able to upgrade it beyond that with additional storage and additional memory. And I assume because it's M1, it will be 8 gigs or 16 gigs. Those will be the options. It seems like a very consumer-focused iMac, and the video presentation was very consumer-focused. It seemed to be targeted at iPhone customers who perhaps haven't used a Mac before. I think it was a nice counterbalance, actually, to Intel's Go PC campaign. It was quite a dignified way of doing things. I think it will bring new users to the Mac, and the M1 Mac is the majority of new Mac sales, so these Macs are already being very successful for Apple and are bringing in new users, I'm sure. So onto the thing that really got me excited now. I was looking forward to a new iPad Pro. That's the thing I was absolutely certain was coming out, but there was still a twist in the tail. The new iPad Pro is getting the M1 chip, and I'm trying to get my head around this and why Apple are doing it. I like using the iPad Pro. I think out of all the computers I've got, it's probably the one I use the most for general purpose computing. So to have one that's got more power, that's brilliant. New storage options as well. You can go all the way up to 2 terabytes. Here's a really great additional feature. The USB-C port, which in fairness is a little bit slow on the iPad Pro, has been upgraded. We're getting Thunderbolt and USB 4. So that speeds things up. That adds a whole range of possibilities to the iPad Pro. There's an ultra-wide selfie camera. This is new as well, 12 megapixels. And what it does is something called center stage, I think they said. So it's obviously filming a large area, and what it does then is it zooms in or crops in on you and your face, and then it will pan and sort of zoom around as you're talking on the camera, which is a really nice feature. The camera is still at the top of the iPad, so if you use it like me in a landscape format and you're doing a video call, it means the camera's sort of off to one side, which isn't very desirable, but I guess it's better than having 2 separate cameras. The display on the 12.9-inch iPad is getting a serious upgrade. So we're getting an XDR display, and I need to stress this is only the 12.9-inch iPad Pro as I understand it. It's going to offer 1,000 nits of full screen brightness and up to 1,600 nits of peak brightness. It will also offer a 1,000,000:1 contrast ratio like the Pro XDR display. And it will do this because it's a mini LED display. So instead of, I think, 72 LEDs in the current model, there are 10,000 of these mini LEDs. And the screen is kind of broken up into small sections, and it allows very precise control over the brightness of an area of the screen, which is what gives you this phenomenal contrast rate and detail. That is exciting. To have a screen of that quality in an iPad, it's just fantastic, particularly for videographers who need to record things out in the field and need a color accurate display. It's quite exciting. And pricing, this is pretty incredible because the pricing doesn't seem to have changed. The 11-inch is still $799, and the 12.9-inch is going to be $1,099 with that amazing display. Now, they didn't give out the specs for those configurations, but I'm sure we'll bring a separate video to the channel on that shortly. So you can pre-order on April the 30th, and it will be available in the second half of May. I just wonder whether the smaller version is going to get that 7-core GPU as well at the starting price. So we'll find out about that. Of course, you've got all of the existing accessories. It seems like it's the same size because those accessories still work. Yeah, you can get that very expensive Magic Keyboard stand, and it's now available in white. If that floats your boat, you can have it in white. So, very exciting, that release. The two sort of surprises, I guess, the release of the iMac before WWDC, but then I think an M1 based small consumer iMac for home use, that does make a lot of sense. And I'd be interested to see what comes at the developer conference in June. Perhaps that's where we'll see the larger iMac, which I would imagine has to have the next generation of M processor in it. So there's no way Apple were going to release the next M chip at this particular event. We'll need to wait for June for news on that, I'm sure. Now, the iPad Pro with the M1 chip, this is really, really interesting. I mean, first of all, to have that much power in an iPad Pro, fantastic. I think that's great. But why the M chip? Will the other iPads eventually get the M chip? Perhaps they'll continue to get A chips like the phones, but the iPad Pro starts a new journey where it kind of blurs the lines even more between an iPad and a computer. It's quite interesting. It makes me just think to myself, well, what I'd really like is the iPad format with macOS on it. In fact, what I'd like is macOS when it's docked, and I'd like to then go onto iPadOS when I take the tablet off the dock and I'm out and about. I wonder if that's somewhere where Apple's intending to go eventually, because that would be an ultimate computer. So what am I going to order and review on the channel? Well, I don't think I'll be splashing out for one of those iMacs. I don't think there's anything new or interesting about it particularly other than the design. It's very much a consumer-focused device, and it's still the same M1 chips that we've tested to death on the channel already. I do want to get the new iPad Pro. I'm intrigued by that, and I'd like to see what its performance is like, and I'm very interested to see the next chapter of that story at the developer conference in June, where Apple explain, what we're going to be able to do with this extra performance in the iPad. So it's been an interesting Apple event. What did you enjoy? What are you happy to see? What are you upset about? Are there things that didn't get released that you were really hoping for? What do you think about the M1 chip in the iPad Pro and these new iMacs? Where are Apple going with all of this? Lots of questions. I think I need a few days to just kind of digest and think about it all. Please leave your thoughts in the comments section. Let's have a chat about it. I hope you enjoyed the video and the brief review of the event. I hope it was useful for you in some way. If so, please consider supporting the channel with just one click of that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Maybe I did enough to earn a thumbs up or a thumbs down, as the case may be. Either way, I hope to see you again soon for some more geekery.